The first thing we're going to do to get started on this recipe is go ahead and make the lemon vinaigrette. And for it, we're going to require a 1/4 cup of fresh lemon juice as well as 2 teaspoons of lemon zest. So we're going to use this zester here and just go ahead and zest the entire exterior of this lemon. And when you're zesting, you want to be careful that you don't go too far into the pith of the lemon. You just want to get that outer yellow layer. You don't want to get really any of the white. That part's really bitter. So it's the outer layer that has all the oils and the intense flavor of the lemon. So of course you want to make sure that you have washed your lemon before you do this. I wash it with a little bit of dish soap and water just to get any of the pesticides that might be lingering or any dirt that's lingering on it. So I'm just zesting the whole outside of this lemon. And then once that's done, I'm going to cut the lemon in half and use my citrus juicer to get some fresh lemon juice. So this recipe also calls for Italian parsley, and that's this flat leaf parsley. Once you give it a good wash and dry, it's ready to use. And we want about a 1/4 cup of lightly packed leaves. If you were making this recipe for a crowd, you could easily double or triple the vinaigrette recipe. This is my 1/4 cup measuring cup. And that's going to be about a 1/4 cup lightly packed. Anytime you're using a blender, you always want to remember to add your liquids in first and then add your other ingredients in on top of that. That helps with the blending process. So basically we're going to add all of the ingredients to the blender here with the exception of the oil. We're going to drizzle that in a little bit later. So the first thing that's going to go in is my lemon juice. It's about a 1/4 cup. And I'm going to add in my 2 cloves of garlic. I'm using my garlic press here, mostly just to get the skins off. I'm being lazy and didn't want to peel them on my own, and my garlic press will smush it right out of the peels. So if you had peeled your garlic cloves, just pop them straight in there because the blender's going to do the work. So there's my 2 cloves of garlic. I'm going to measure about 2 teaspoons of lemon zest, and I think what you'll see is that that's about the amount of lemon zest you get from 1 lemon. Sure is. So the lemon zest from that whole lemon goes right in. Then we're also going to measure about half a teaspoon of salt. I'm using kosher salt here. Sea salt would work, or just regular iodized salt. And then we're going to do about a 1/4 teaspoon of pepper, and I'm just eyeballing that amount there. Our leaves are going to go in last, right on top. And then I'm going to stick this in and give it a whir. So I've just scraped down the sides of my blender, and I'm going to start it up again, and then once it's going, I'm going to finish drizzling in the remaining extra virgin olive oil. And then my vinaigrette will be complete. So you may have noticed that I switched equipment, and what I quickly realized was that I didn't have enough volume in my large blender to actually make it work. So everything was staying under the blender blade and not actually combining to form my vinaigrette. So I'm using my emulsion blender here. I just poured everything that was in my blender pitcher, which is the olive oil, the salt, the pepper, the parsley flakes, and put it directly into, and the lemon juice, put it directly into this cup that I'll use my emulsion blender with, and then I'm just going to give that a go. At this point, the vinaigrette is done. It's completely emulsified, which means the olive oil and the lemon juice have been incorporated into the same medium here. So it's a nice thick green color, and this is going to be beautiful drizzled over our fish and cannellini, bean, and radicchio mixture. All right, so now that we have our vinaigrette done and we have it set aside, we're going to go ahead and get started on the main course. And the first thing we're going to do here is get the radicchio ready. And basically all I'm going to do, just like if you had a cabbage, I'm just going to cut it in half. And then I'm going to cut the core out of it. And the core is this part. And so I'm basically just going to do kind of a triangular cut here to remove the core from the radicchio. Just like that. And I'll do the same thing on this side. Now, I'm going to coarsely chop the radicchio. And then I'm going to run my knife through just once down the middle. So my slices aren't quite as long. And that's all there is to do for that. Next, I'm going to prep the shallots. Now that we have the radicchio taken care of and set inside, it's time to thinly slice our shallots. I'm cutting it in half from top to bottom, just like I would any time I'm cutting an onion. But instead of the horizontal and vertical slices that we do when we're dicing an onion, I'm just going to make some thin slices. And this time, I do have a little handle here, so I'm just going to run my knife through and try and make nice and maybe not exactly paper thin slices, but they're pretty thin. See how I'm keeping the tip of my knife down the whole time. Remembering to practice your knife skills at every opportunity. And so the tilapia fillet is such that the belly side is rather thin and the back side is a little thicker, and they'll cook unevenly. So what we're going to do in this recipe is just cut them right down the middle. There's kind of a line already there for you. So just go ahead and continue cutting along that line to separate the fillet into two pieces. Once you have those two pieces, what we're going to do is just lay the fish into the flour, flip it over. So this is called dredging, and we're just doing it really lightly, and then we're kind of shaking off any excess flour. So we want the flour to stick to the fish, but we don't want to make a thick coating, just a very thin one. So we're going to do the same thing with all of our fish fillets, first cutting them in half, and then dredging them lightly in flour. Okay, we have finished all the preparations for our dish, and now it's time to turn it back to the stovetop where we're going to finish things up. The first step of this process is getting a large, heavy skillet, which I have right here, and turning it on over medium heat. What we're going to do is add about 2 tablespoons of our oil directly to the pan. And we're going to wait for it to shimmer. Now in this recipe, it does call for sauteing with olive oil. And if you'll remember from the readings prior to this lab, olive oil has a relatively low smoke point. And so a lot of the times, we're going to want to choose an oil with a higher smoke point just so that it doesn't get that off taste or start smoking when we get up to a certain temperature. But we have our olive oil in the pan, and we're waiting for it to start shimmering. First, you're going to really smell it start to get fruity and fragrant. This is extra virgin olive oil that we're using here. And then, as soon as that's done, we're going to put the shallots directly into the pan and saute them until they're tender. That'll take about 2 minutes to do. And once that's done, we're going to add the rest of our vegetables kind of one at a time. And this will be the base or the foundation for our fish dish. So we'll go ahead and get started with that now. Okay, our oil is shimmering now and has come up to temperature. And so we're going to go ahead and get started sauteing our shallots. We're just going to put them directly into the pan here. All right, the onions have been in for about 2 minutes and they're starting to brown and certainly soften. So at this point, we're going to add the radicchio straight into the mixture. And it's going to fill up the skillet, as you can see. And we're going to let that start to cook down. We're sauteing this until it's wilted. That's going to take about 5 minutes. While that's going, I'm going to go ahead and turn on this smaller frying pan. And the only reason I'm using a small one here is because I am only going to cook one fish fillet at this moment. But typically for this recipe, you're going to want to use another large frying pan. And we're going to go ahead and cook these things at the same time, so we'll be able to take both things off the heat around the same point, and it will be completely done. So you can already see the volume of the radicchio is diminishing considerably as the water is released from the leaves. The volume. While this oil is getting hot, we're going to go ahead and season our fish fillets here. And of course they've already been dredged in flour, but all we're going to do now is just sprinkle them with a little bit of salt and pepper. This radicchio is really starting to caramelize. You can see it in the brown color that's coming through. We just have about another minute or so on it. As you can see, it's definitely wilted. And as soon as that's done, we're going to add the beans and broth in and let that cook for about 5 more minutes, and that's going to be done. Meanwhile, I'm going to go ahead and get the fish fillets into this smaller skillet. It's important that with the fish we don't flip it too early. We want to really let it sit for about 2 or 3 minutes until it really caramelizes on the bottom, and that's what's going to allow the fish to release from the bottom of the frying pan. So if we flip it too early, we're liable to stick. If we let it really cook until it's really formed that nice brown crust, that's when it's going to release easily and be able to flip and give us a beautiful brown color. Alright, so it's been about 3 minutes, and I'm going to go ahead and check the fish fillets. Now, we definitely have a thin one and we have one that's a little bit thicker. So expect the one that's thinner. Obviously, it's going to cook a little bit more quickly. So I'm just going to slide my turner under here, flip it over. And that maybe could have gone a little bit longer to develop more of a crust. Meanwhile, to finish up the bean and radicchio mixture, all we're going to do is season with a little bit of salt and pepper. And now let's check this fillet. I think this fillet is going to be done here any second, and this one we're going to give just about a minute or so more on this side. It's going to take about 3 minutes per side for the fillet, a little less than that for the thin one. And to serve this, we're just going to put a bed of the bean and radicchio mixture down, top that with our delicious fish fillets. We're going to add a little bit of this beautiful lemon vinaigrette over the top. And that's it. Delicious white fish with sauteed radicchio and cannellini beans and a lemon vinaigrette. Easy, delicious, full of great nutrients. Hope you enjoy.